What if I told you that earning just one extra dollar of income this year could trigger a completely hidden government penalty?
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time.
Right, like literally instantly costing you thousands of dollars in health insurance surcharges. I mean, you spend decades meticulously building this portfolio, tracking every basis point of return, but a tiny $1 miscalculation on your tax return could just quietly siphon away a massive chunk of your wealth.
It really does happen far more often than people realize. In the realm of high net worth wealth management, the IRS operates with absolute, mathematical precision.
Yeah, they don't mess around.
No, not at all. If you're solely focused on your investment returns and you're just kind of ignoring the upcoming shifts in the tax code, you're basically leaving the back door to your vault wide open.
And locking that back door is our singular focus today. So, welcome to the deep dive. We are navigating a looming massive change to the tax code that is just barreling toward us.
It really is.
We're pulling our insights today from an incredibly comprehensive guide titled Roth Conversion Strategies: 7 Proven Tips for HMW Retirees.
Which is a fantastic resource, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. This was put together by Thomas Davies for Davies Wealth Management's 1715 Treasure Coast Financial Wellness Platform. They are a fee-only fiduciary advisor based in Stuart, Florida. So our mission today is to equip you with both the absolute urgency of why now and the mechanical how-to of defending your retirement wealth from future tax hikes.
Yeah, because the strategies outlined in this guide aren't just, theoretical thought experiments.
Right. It's not just academics.
Exactly. They are practical, highly time-sensitive defenses. We are approaching a very specific statutory deadline in the tax code, and, well, the window to execute these maneuvers is closing fast.
Yeah, and I want to speak directly to you listening right now. Even if you don't necessarily classify your own portfolio as ultra wealthy, if you have spent a lifetime accumulating pre-tax assets, the principles we're dissecting today are just critical.
Absolutely critical.
This is about playing proactive legal tax defense. Okay, let's unpack this. The entire architecture of this guide really rests on the execution of a Roth conversion.
Right.
Just to set the baseline here for everyone, a conversion means you are voluntarily accelerating your tax bill. You're taking pre-tax dollars, paying ordinary income tax on them today, so that the principal and, all future compounding become tax-free forever.
Yeah, that's the core mechanic.
But the kicker here, the real reason this is a cornerstone strategy, is that unlike regular Roth contributions, conversions have zero income limit.
Exactly. The tax code essentially leaves this door wide open.
Yeah.
I mean, whether your adjusted gross income is $200,000 or $2 million, you can convert as much of your pre-tax assets as you desire.
Which is huge.
It is. It's the primary vehicle for high net worth individuals who are otherwise completely locked out of the Roth ecosystem due to those high income contribution limits. But to truly grasp the urgency of why we're mapping this out today, we really have to look at the legislative ticking clock.
Yeah, let's talk about that clock, because the guide is basically sounding a blaring alarm about December 31st, 2025.
The big sunset.
Right, the scheduled sunset of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. To use an analogy, it's like we've been shopping at this massive clearance sale on federal tax rates for the past few years.
That's a great way to put it.
But the store management has already announced, by law, that this sale definitively ends at midnight on New Year's Eve 2025.
Yeah, because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act lowered federal tax brackets across the board, but they were explicitly written as temporary measures for individuals.
Just for individuals, right?
Right. So if Congress simply does nothing, if partisan gridlock prevails and the law expires exactly as written, the brackets automatically snap back to their heavier pre-2018 levels.
Ouch.
Yeah. The top marginal rate, for instance, jumps from 37% back up to 39.6%.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If someone already has millions saved, why bother moving money around just to volunteer to pay taxes to the IRS right now? I mean, you've spent your entire career deferring those taxes specifically to avoid paying them. Why not just leave the money in the traditional accounts and deal with the taxes later when you actually need the cash?
Well, because wealth preservation is ultimately an exercise in basic math.
Oh, okay.
You're specifically weighing known variables against unknown variables. So you are choosing between paying a known historically low tax rate today versus an unknown but mathematically higher rate tomorrow.
Right, that makes sense.
Let's look closely at the current 24% tax bracket. If that sunset occurs, that specific bracket is scheduled to revert to 28%.
Wow.
And that is not a minor adjustment. That is a massive 17% increase in the marginal rate you pay on those dollars.
A 17% increase on the tax rate itself. I mean, that is staggering when you apply it to large balances.
Oh, absolutely. Consider a retiree projecting a $300,000 conversion. If they stubbornly wait until after the sunset to move that money, that 4% jump from 24 to 28 translates into an extra $12,000 in federal tax per year for executing the exact same financial maneuver.
Just for waiting.
Just for waiting. Stretch that over a 10-year conversion plan and you've surrendered over $100,000 of your wealth simply because you refused to act during the window.
Man, that hurts to even think about. And the Davies Wealth Management Guide leans heavily into a geographic superpower here, specifically for Florida retirees.
Oh, the Florida advantage is huge.
Right, because Florida is one of only 9 states with zero personal income tax. The math on these conversions changes dramatically depending on your zip code.
The contrast is incredibly stark. The guide compares a Florida resident executing this strategy to someone living in New Jersey.
Okay, let's hear the difference.
Well, a retiree in New Jersey might face a state tax rate of up to 10.75% layered on top of their federal tax bill for the conversion. Yeah. Meanwhile, the Florida resident pays solely the federal rate. That means significantly less capital bleeds out to taxes, leaving a much larger principal balance working tax-free inside the Roth, compounding year after year.
That's an immense structural advantage.
It really is.
So the why is undeniable. The clearance sale is ending, and your geographic location dictates your leverage. But the when is just as critical. The guide identifies a very specific period in a retiree's life as the golden window for these moves.
The pre-RMD window.
Exactly. We're talking about the gap between retirement, say, around age 62 when you stop collecting a salary and age 73.
Right. And RMDs, or required minimum distributions, are basically the government's way of finally collecting their deferred revenue.
They always come to collect.
They always do. At age 73, the IRS mandates that you begin withdrawing a specific calculating percentage from your pre-tax accounts every single year. And you're paying taxes on it, regardless of whether you actually need that income to live on.
I look at that window between 62 and 73 like the eye of the hurricane.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, the high-velocity winds of your peak career salary have finally died down, so your taxable income has naturally dropped. But that torrential downpour of forced government RMDs hasn't hit you yet. You have this quiet, controllable calm in the middle.
What's fascinating here is the compounding dual benefit of operating inside that hurricane eye.
How so?
Primarily, your lower earned income allows you to push money into the Roth at much lower marginal tax brackets.
Right.
But strategically, every single dollar you convert during this calm period permanently erases that money from your pre-tax ledger.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so by the time you reach age 73, the total pool of money that the government uses to calculate your forced RMDs is drastically smaller. You are intentionally shrinking the target on your back.
That is so smart. Which brings us to the actual mechanics of moving the money, because the goal isn't to just take a $2 million IRA and blindly dump it into a Roth on a Tuesday morning.
No, please do not do that.
Right. If you do that, you're going to push almost all of that capital straight into the highest possible tax bracket, entirely defeating the purpose of the strategy.
Precision is mandatory here. And this introduces the discipline of bracket filling.
Bracket filling. Yeah.
You basically treat your current optimal tax bracket like a predetermined container.
Yeah.
And you convert just enough money to fill that container to the absolute brim without letting a single dollar spill over into the higher bracket.
It's exactly like using a measuring cup.
Exactly.
The guide maps out a scenario for a married couple in 2024. Let's say they have $250,000 in taxable income from a pension and Social Security.
Okay.
The 24% federal bracket caps out at roughly $383,900. So they have exactly $133,900 of empty volume left in that 24% measuring cup.
Right. That's their capacity.
So they convert exactly that amount, pay the 24%, and halt the pour right before they hit the 32% threshold.
And achieving that level of precision requires meticulous end-of-year forecasting. You really must project your comprehensive full-year income factoring in capital gains, mutual fund distributions, unexpected dividends, all of that before you finalize the conversion amount.
Because you are strictly limiting how much you pour each year, you're forced to stagger a large conversion over a multi-year horizon.
Yes.
You spread a massive portfolio conversion over 5, 10, or even 15 years. You fill the bracket in year 1, let the calendar roll over, adjust for inflation, and fill the bracket again in year 2.
It demands immense patience. You're running a marathon, deliberately pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you rush the process and convert too aggressively, you don't just trigger higher income tax brackets, you start tripping over hidden landmines buried in the tax code.
Let's dig into those landmines, actually, because this is where the system feels almost punitive. The guide heavily emphasizes the danger of IRMAA thresholds.
IRMAA, yes.
Yeah, IRMAA stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount.
Which sounds like a very benign administrative acronym, right?
It really does.
But it is actually a severe surcharge slapped onto your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums.
Oh, man.
And the really insidious part is that it operates on a delay.
A delay.
Yeah, it calculates your surcharge based on your modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI, from 2 years prior.
Wow.
So a Roth conversion you execute in 2024 directly dictates the Medicare premiums you'll be billed in 2026.
Wait, really? So I'm just trying to manually manage my income tax liability, but if my spreadsheet is off by literally $1, I accidentally trigger a massive health insurance penalty 2 years later?
Unfortunately, yes, because IRMAA utilizes a cliff system, which behaves very differently from tax brackets.
That's so.
Well, progressive tax brackets are marginal, right?
Yeah.
If you cross into a new bracket, only the newly earned dollars are taxed at the higher rate.
Right.
But IRMAA is absolute. Let's examine the 2024 data for married couple. The first cliff is set at $206,000. If your ANGI is exactly $206,000, you pay the standard base Medicare premium. If your income ticks over to $206,001, the single dollar over the line, you fall completely off the cliff into the first penalty tier.
That is terrifying. And what is the actual financial damage of that $1 mistake?
That single dollar triggers a surcharge, costing that couple nearly $2,000 in additional Medicare premiums for the year.
$2,000 for a $1 mistake.
Exactly. And there are several escalating cliffs as your income rises. Hitting the highest tier can saddle you with over $12,000 a year in sheer penalty costs.
That drastically alters how you calculate your bracket filling.
It really does. It forces you to operate defensively. In some years, you must deliberately convert less money, intentionally leaving space in your tax bracket just to ensure you stay a safe distance back from an IRMAA cliff.
That makes sense.
But conversely, if late-year calculations reveal you were already $10,000 over a cliff, the strategy flips.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You might as well aggressively convert more money right up to the edge of the next cliff. The marginal IRMAA penalty for that extra conversion volume is zero, because you were already locked into paying the surcharge for that tier anyway. Maximize the space you've already been penalized for.
It's an incredibly complex balancing act.
Very much so.
And it extends beyond Medicare too, right? The guide also flags the NIT, the 3.8% net investment income tax.
Wow.
If a Roth conversion pushes your modified adjusted gross income over $250,000, the converted dollars themselves aren't hit by the NIT, but that elevated income level can suddenly expose your other investment streams like capital gains, dividends, or real estate rental income to this sneaky 3.8% tax.
Which perfectly illustrates why these conversions cannot be executed in a vacuum. A single dollar of conversion income sends cascading ripples across your entire financial profile.
Okay, we've mapped out the defensive maneuvers. We know how to dodge the IRMAA cliffs and sidestep the NIT traps. I want to pivot now to the offensive playbook.
Let's do it.
How do we mathematically supercharge the yield on a Roth conversion? The guide highlights leveraging market downturns, specifically executing conversions when the stock market drops 20 to 30%.
This requires steely emotional discipline, but it is one of the most mathematically potent maneuvers available.
Yeah.
You see, when the broader market contracts, the average investor panics and retreats. A strategic investor looks at their diminished portfolio and recognizes that a Roth conversion just went on sale.
Let's walk through the actual math to show how powerful this is. Say you're holding $500,000 worth of an index fund in your traditional IRA, but just a few months ago, before a bad quarter, it was valued at $700,000.
Okay, rough quarter.
Right, but if you pull the trigger and convert it now at the depressed $500,000 valuation, you are only paying taxes on that lower amount.
Exactly.
If you're sitting in the 24% bracket, converting at $500,000 instead of the previous $700,000 outright saves you roughly $48,000 in federal taxes.
And saving the $48,000 is really only the initial phase of the victory.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, definitely. Historically, broad markets always eventually recover. When that index fund rebounds and regains that $200,000 of lost value, all of that explosive growth occurs securely inside the Roth IRA. The entire recovery is completely tax-free.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's the exact same dynamic as buying a house during a massive real estate crash.
Yes.
You acquire the asset at rock bottom pricing, and then you just sit back and let it appreciate in a neighborhood where the property taxes are permanently zero.
That is a highly accurate analogy.
Yeah.
You are transferring the asset across the tax border at the exact moment it weighs the least, allowing it to bulk back up exclusively in the tax-free zone.
Let's explore another offensive tactic. You've navigated the IRMAA cliffs, but you're still absorbing the federal tax hit from the conversion itself. Is there a way to mathematically neutralize that?
There is.
The guide points to charitable giving.
Yeah, so if you are already charitably inclined and you're over age 70 and a half, the tax code permits qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs. You can route up to $105,000 directly from your pre-tax IRA to a qualified charity. This maneuver legally satisfies your required minimum distribution. But the crucial detail here is that it doesn't add a single penny to your adjusted gross income.
Oh, that's clever.
Right. By suppressing your income with a QCD, you preserve that highly valuable lower tax bracket space, which allows you to execute a larger Roth conversion at a cheaper rate.
But what if you aren't old enough for a QCD yet? Say you're 65.
Then you look at donor-advised funds.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, because the standard deduction is so high today, regular piecemeal annual giving rarely moves the needle on your tax return.
Right, you just take the standard deduction.
Exactly. But if you bunch 5 years of planned donations into a donor-advised fund in the exact same year you execute a massive Roth conversion, you suddenly generate an itemized deduction massive enough to legally wipe out the tax liability generated by the conversion.
It's brilliant. The charity gets fully funded, and you artificially manufacture the bracket space you need.
It's a win-win.
Now, I want to talk about estate planning, because this might be the most consequential strategy for families listening right now. This is heavily tied to a relatively recent legislative overhaul called the Secure Act.
The Secure Act violently rewrote the rule book on inherited wealth.
Did it really?
Oh, yeah. It completely dismantled what the industry called the stretch IRA. Previously, if you bequeathed a traditional IRA to your children, the tax code allowed them to stretch the required withdrawals and the accompanying tax burden over their entire projected lifespan.
Which is great for compounding.
It was an incredibly efficient wealth transfer tool.
But the government shut that down.
Completely. Under the new framework, non-spouse heirs are subjected to a rigid 10-year rule. They are legally forced to completely liquidate that inherited traditional IRA within 10 years of your passing.
And if you model the timeline of when people typically inherit wealth, their parents usually pass away when the children are in their 50s or 60s. Those are peak earning years. Your kids are likely already sitting in their highest lifetime tax brackets, and now the IRS is forcing them to dump a massive, fully taxable inherited IRA directly on top of their peak salary.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is precisely where that Florida geographic advantage evolves into a generational superpower.
I see where you're going with this.
Imagine you were sitting in Florida, enjoying a 0% state income tax environment. You methodically convert your traditional IRA to a Roth, paying perhaps a 24% federal rate and absolute zero state tax.
Right.
When you pass away, your children inherit a Roth IRA instead of a traditional one. Inherited Roths are still subject to that 10-year draining rule, but crucially, every single withdrawal they are forced to make is tax-free.
Oh, wow. So if I have kids building their careers in high tax states, like the guide specifically calls out California and New York, I am essentially building a financial blast shield around their inheritance.
Precisely. An heir in California inheriting a pre-tax IRA could easily face a combined federal and state marginal tax rate approaching 50% on those forced distributions.
Half of it gone.
Gone. But by absorbing the tax hit yourself at your favorable 24% rate in a zero-tax state, you effectively double the net capital your child gets to keep. You arbitrage the geographic difference to save them from a brutal wealth confiscation.
That is an incredibly powerful legacy play. But as with any high-level strategy, the execution have to be flawless. The guide spends significant time warning about costly unforced errors.
Oh, yes.
And the most glaring mistake is how people actually pay the tax bill on the conversion itself.
Oh, this is a mechanical error that destroys wealth every single day. Let's say you execute a $400,000 conversion.
All right.
Naturally, you owe the IRS a sizable tax payment. The instinctive convenient thought is, I'll just check the box to have the IRA withhold $100,000 for taxes, and I'll roll the remaining $300,000 into the Roth.
I mean, it feels efficient. You don't have to come out of pocket.
It is efficient, but it completely sabotages the math.
How so?
That $100,000 you withheld is forever stripped of its tax-free compounding potential. You want the absolute maximum amount of capital crossing the border into the Roth.
Hmm.
The golden rule of conversions is you must pay the tax liability using outside non-retirement funds. You use cash from a checking account, a high-yield savings account, or by liquidating assets in a taxable brokerage. Send the entire $400,000 block into the Roth so it can immediately begin compounding.
Do not kill the golden goose to pay the toll. Let the whole flock through.
Exactly.
Another deeply misunderstood mechanic is the 5-year rule. This is a very quirky IRS mandate. In order to withdraw the earnings generated by your conversion completely tax-free, your Roth IRA must have been open and funded for at least 5 full tax years.
The mechanism here is strictly calendar-based. The clock starts on January 1st of the year you make your very first contribution or conversion. So even if you just open an empty Roth IRA today and fund it with a tiny minimal contribution, you start that 5-year clock ticking. It's a simple administrative chore, but if you neglect it, you can find your earnings trapped behind a penalty wall right when you need the liquidity.
We also need to emphasize irreversibility here. The guide notes that prior to 2018, the IRS offered a mulligan. You could recharacterize a conversion.
Those are the days.
Yeah, if you converted $500,000 and the market crashed a month later, you could basically hit undo, erase the tax bill, and send the assets back to the traditional IRA.
That safety net no longer exists.
It's totally gone.
Totally gone. The 2017 tax legislation permanently outlawed recharacterizations. Once you execute the conversion, the concrete is instantly dry. You cannot reverse it.
Wow.
This is why every ounce of income modeling, IRMAA projection, and bracket filling must be finalized before you authorize the transfer.
So what does this all mean for my Social Security? We are talking about deliberately spiking my adjusted gross income on paper for several years. Does the government look at that and decide to take a bigger bite out of my monthly Social Security checks?
It is a vital question, and the reality is that it absolutely can.
Really?
Yeah. The IRS calculates a metric called provisional income, and based on that number, up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can become subject to federal taxation. Because a Roth conversion directly inflates your adjusted gross income for that specific year, it can forcefully drag a larger portion of your Social Security into the taxable zone.
That feels like a double penalty.
It does. Now, context is important. For the high net worth demographic targeted by the Davies Wealth Management Guide, their baseline income is frequently high enough that they are already being taxed on 85% of their Social Security benefits anyway.
So it doesn't really change anything for them.
Right. In those scenarios, the conversion doesn't alter their Social Security tax burden at all. But for someone sitting in the transition zone, perhaps living primarily on Social Security and modest portfolio withdrawals, that interaction must be modeled meticulously.
Yeah.
You do not want a strategic $10,000 conversion to unexpectedly trigger a tax bill on your monthly livelihood.
It's an intricate ecosystem. You pull one tax lever and 3 other financial mechanisms shift in response. To summarize this entire playbook, executing a Roth conversion is not a simple transaction you casually finalize on a Sunday afternoon.
Definitely not.
It is a multi-year, multi-dimensional chess game. You are simultaneously optimizing federal tax brackets, navigating absolute IRMAA cliffs, leveraging Florida's zero tax residency, and engineering a tax-free inheritance for your children.
Yeah.
And with the December 2025 sunset relentlessly approaching, the guide makes it clear. Hope is not a strategy.
This raises an important question, one that every investor should deeply ponder.
What's up?
Well, throughout our entire analysis today, we have been operating on the conservative assumption that post-2025, the tax brackets will simply revert to their older 2017 levels.
Right.
But when you examine the current trajectory of the national debt, what if those old 2017 rates are merely the floor?
Oh, wow.
If future legislative environments dictate the tax rates must be hiked significantly higher than even the pre-TCJA levels, then locking in a 24% rate today isn't just a prudent defensive strategy. It might go down in history as the financial bargain of the century.
Now that is a sobering thought to leave you with. If you want to ensure your financial vault is fully secured before the tax code shifts, the guide strongly suggests utilizing their retirement readiness checklist.
Highly recommend it.
Look closely at your own accounts, run the math on your brackets, and define your next strategic move before this unprecedented clearance sale ends. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.